Berto Tobin here for RealAgriculture.com, coming to you today at the London Farm Show, joined by Andrew Campbell.
How are you, Bern?
Thanks, and I'm doing good. Thank you for joining the show. Now, most of you would know Andrew, a dairy farmer from Strathroy, Ontario, as Fresh Ear Farmer on Twitter, and by the hashtag Farm365.
Right.
Awesome. Let's talk. I want to talk about your experiences with Farm365, what you've learned in the last 2 months, and what farmers can learn from what you've learned.
Sure. Basically. Well, I think one of the big things is that I've learned is that people crave this information from the farm. You know, it's one of those things that we've talked about for a number of years, and I know a lot of organizations have been pushing farmers on the advocacy side of things. You know, this shows over the last couple of months that there are a pile of people that are really interested and want the information from the farm as to how their food's produced. It's information that, you know, they maybe have been looking for in the past, you know, maybe found some things they wanted to know, some things they didn't. They just want it from the source of the farm. And I think for farmers, you know, that's a big push that we all need to do a little better job of pushing that message.
Let's go back to January 1st.
Sure.
This has been a crazy 2 months for you.
Yes.
And it's not about the snow or the cold weather.
No.
Right? Talk about how this thing has happened over the last couple of months and what trials and tribulations.
Sure. So when we kind of first started, you know, in that about the 30th, 31st, media kind of picked up that we were going to be taking this picture every day. And, you know, with that, especially in those first few media interviews, you know, we jumped followers in thousands. You know, so right off the bat, you knew that this information was important to people and people wanted to follow along. And so, you know, that was really kind of that first message. You know, then we had a period of time, you know, a pretty short period of time of some really aggressive animal activists specifically that were pushing their own messages and their own propaganda onto it. And, you know, about that same time, a lot of other farmers around the world, you know, decided that this was worth continuing on, so they started posting their own pictures. So, you know, we've learned that, you know, one, you know, farmers protect their own, and, you know, want to share that information, just need that push in that right direction, you know, and are, you know, generally, you know, open and, you know, want to pass that information on. And then, you know, on the other side, you know, we've learned that, you know, the animal activists have existed. We knew what their messages were in the industry. You know, we've studied their messaging and their tactics for a number of years. You know, this was really one of the first places, though, where farmers and activists kind of met together and, you know, almost battled it out, had those discussions, you know, kind of on Twitter or wherever it was online. So we learned that, you know, they're also a really passionate group of people, you know, and believe in their own messages. But I think, you know, we found that most people want to hear from the farm side, you know, realize that that animal activist side may not be accurate, and so want to hear, you know, what does a farmer have to say about that.
So, I mean, there's really, what we see, really a bad and a good side to this.
Right.
The first thing was that bad side that you saw.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think what we've seen is the good side of this.
Oh, yeah.
Not from two sides. First, it's the farmer's reaction and the farmer's involvement in supporting you and cheering. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, you know what, that's been one of the most incredible experiences for me, is seeing all those farmers come on in, you know, one of two ways. One, you know, they believe that it's important, so want to share that message, or two, you know, saw a lot of that propaganda and said, you know, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to pass it. I'm going to share, you know, what we're doing on our farm. I'm going to share the truth as to what's going on the farm. So, you know, that's been one of the things that, you know, has really, you know, really touched me the most, is having all those farmers jump on board and saying, yeah, you know, this, we're committed to what we do, we believe in what we do, and we want to share it.
Yeah. And you also talked about the other side is the questions you're getting from consumers.
Right. Yes.
And some of the great questions and some of the things you've been able to share. Talk a little bit about that.
You know what, right from the beginning, you know, there was a large group that said, you know, this is a really great project, we can't wait to follow along. And in, you know, the weeks after that, you know, we saw classrooms that have come on board, and, you know, as a classroom, you know, each morning I've heard of stories where the teacher shows the picture and, you know, they discuss what the picture of the day has been. In some cases, you know, questions start coming back from the class to say, you know, what is this, or how does it work, or, you know, the kindergarten class, it's always fun to hear some of those questions about, you know, how long do cows sleep and how much do they eat, and kind of those kindergarten class questions has been really neat. And, you know, then we see other consumers, you know, in a lot of cases, you know, our parents, are people, in some cases are people who grew up on the farm, a generation or two back and haven't been on it for, 50 years and are really, interested in seeing how things have changed since they were kids. And getting a lot of those questions as people, saying, I just hadn't thought of that, or, it was something that, I've heard a lot about this, but now I understand why, that practice happens. It's been really cool.
Now you did this, you talked about earlier, in the presentation earlier today, Andrew talked about, hey, it was a great idea, it was a simple idea, you never thought it would become what it is today, but it is what it is.
Yes.
And it's very impactful. And just wanted to get some thoughts on you and what farmers like you could be doing. You've got a few ideas.
Sure. So, the big thing is that, social media, being the primary tool that we can use, since we can have an impact over a large number of people, I think the big thing is that, we're farmers are, we're really proud of what we do. We love what we do. But in a lot of cases, I talked about in the presentation too, we see a great YouTube video and we say, wow, that makes me feel so good as a farmer. And then we shut the computer off and go about our day. We don't take that time to say, I wonder who else would be touched by this or who would be interested in it. So I think one of the biggest things we have to get more comfortable with is just sharing what we do or what we enjoy or the things that, do have meaning to us. I think as farmers, if we committed to, one thing once a week, we could have a tremendous impact when you start multiplying that.
It can be a photo.
It can be a photo, it can be, even you just see something on Facebook that you say, wow, that's a really cool Facebook post. Just hit the share button. That counts as one act once a week. It's taken you 3 seconds to do. I think if we become more vocal, we'll actually, be seen as part of this conversation and be seen as a group of people that believes in what we do and want to be open about what we do. That's one of the biggest things that a consumer wants to see.
And I guess as a farmer, this is your industry.
Yes.
This is, farmers' industry. You need to shape the perception of your industry and don't leave it to A&W and some other folks.
Well, when you think about and you start seeing some of these messages, a lot of this stuff that, farmers who have been involved in the Farm 365 on Twitter have seen, these messages are not new messages at all. They've existed for a decade or more in a lot of cases. It's just for that past time, they've always kind of been on the fringe or, haven't had that opportunity to have an impact in other groups. But the reality is they've been part of this discussion around food and what farming should be for that decade. And farmers, we've sat back and said, we've got this, don't worry, just trust us. Well, I think the biggest thing that we can learn from that is that we just need to be part of that conversation. We need to get up and say, here's what we do, here's why we do it. And, for the most part, a consumer is going to say, yes, that's the information I wanted. I just wasn't hearing from you before.
Farmers, that's it. Farmers need to tell their story.
Well, and you know what, that's what all of this is about, is that, people want that connection with the farm, they want that connection with how their food's produced. It's just a case of, you've just got to be the one to tell the story. You can let others tell the story if you want, but the messaging isn't going to be what you want it to be. So, we just have to take a bigger role in that message.
Well, Andrew, Farm 365 hashtag,
Fresh
Air Farmer on Twitter. Hey, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And we'll talk again.
Sounds wonderful.